So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing the new spin-off from the Batman, which is, of course, The Penguin. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Penguin, as I've already said, is a spin-off from The Batman, which released in 2022. 2 years ago now, which is kind of mad to think about. And I absolutely loved The Batman. It was one of my favourite films of 2022. I saw it about 3 or 4 times in the cinema, and the more I thought about it, the more I watched it, the more I just loved it. So, you would think that when a spin-off to The Batman was announced, I would be very, very excited about it. But I wasn't. In fact, I was kind of dreading it because the majority of the superhero / comic book TV shows we have had over the past however many years, over the past 5 years, let's say, have not been great. In fact, some of them have been pretty bad. No disrespect to somebody who might, if you're watching this and you've enjoyed the majority of the superhero TV shows that have come out over the past however many years, but with the exception of a few superhero TV shows here and there, like Loki and The Boys, I haven't really enjoyed the majority of the superhero TV shows or comic book TV shows that have come out over the past 5 years. And when I heard that a Penguin TV show, which is going to be a spin-off from the Batman, was in the works, I was dreading it more than excited about it because it was just like, oh, it's another superhero comic book TV show that'll probably disappoint me. You know, like I've already said, the majority of the superhero TV shows that released over the past 5 years haven't been for me, and I was worried that Penguin was going to be the same. But I wanted to watch it nonetheless. However, I did wait to watch it. Like, when the series started airing about 2 months ago now, it was around about 2 months ago, I didn't watch it straight away. I watched it after about episode 5 was released. Yeah, because I wanted to hear what people were saying about this series, whether people were actually enjoying it or not. And I heard a lot of great things about the first 5 episodes of Penguin, so I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. Hopefully I find it at least enjoyable. And the Google plot synopsis for The Penguin goes as follows. This series follows the transformation of Oscorp, aka The Penguin, from a disfigured nobody to a noted Gotham gangster. And that's pretty much all I need to know about this series before seeing it. And honestly, after finishing all 8 episodes of The Penguin yesterday, here are my thoughts on it. I thought this series was excellent. I did not expect it to be as good as it was. And I'm not saying the series doesn't have problems. Sometimes the series gets a little too dark for my liking, and I don't think it's the sort of TV show where you can watch multiple episodes at once. Because I started watching this show about 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and I can only watch one like every other night or one a week at one point because of how dark and depressing this show is. But it's so well written, and it's led by 4 magnificent performances that constantly draw you into this seedy underbelly of Gotham. And that's another thing I absolutely adored about this series, and that is the world building. Because although I absolutely adored the Batman, the Gotham that you see in the Batman, it feels limited. You only see like, about 7 locations in the entirety of that film, which is almost 3 hours long. Again, I absolutely loved that movie, but I did feel Gotham was a little limited here and there in that film. Whilst in this TV show, I absolutely loved how expanded on the world of Gotham that we saw in the Batman, because in this it really makes Gotham feel like a place you can actually go and visit. Like, genuinely now, I feel like I could go to America and Gotham would be there, because of how authentic and how real the Gotham in this series feels. And that's probably the thing I loved most about this series, about the Penguin series, is the world building. Usually I get annoyed when people say, oh, I like this series just because of the great world building. But that is kind of the reason I like this series so much, so I'm being a bit of a hypocrite there. But I didn't just love it because of the world building, but the world building was kind of the main reason I did love it. Because, again, going back into what I was saying, I went into the series thinking, oh god, is Gotham going to feel limited again like it did in the Batman? But it doesn't. When you get to this series, you see this side to Gotham that I just loved exploring. Particularly the people inside Gotham. Like, you follow this character called Vincent, played brilliantly by Renzi Felice in this series. You follow this character called Vincent, and when you learn about his backstory, I think episode 3 of this series, it tied into the Batman in a way that I really admired, because one of the things that I kind of wanted from the Batman after seeing the film, one of the small nitpicky criticisms I had with that movie was when you see, and spoiler here in case you haven't seen the Batman, but the film did release 2 years ago now. If you wanted to see it, you've had your chance to. But in the Batman, when you see the Riddler's plan succeed and the blowing up part of Gotham, and then Gotham starts to flood, you don't really feel the effect of all the flooding taking place. You feel it to a certain degree, but you don't feel as much as you could have. And I remember watching the Batman in the cinema and seeing all that flooding take place in the film and thinking, oh my god, the amount of people that must be dying from this. But then the film didn't really cover that. And then you get to this series, and I'm not going to go into details in case people haven't seen the show yet. This is a spoiler-free review. But you get to this series and you see the effect that the flooding had on the character Vincent, which I loved. It's only like a 5-minute section of the show where you see the effect of the flooding, but the way it tied into the Batman and the way it just fleshed out the world of Gotham, the city of Gotham, rather should I say, in this world of the Batman, I loved. And that was the thing which really impressed me about the series. The world building. And the second thing that truly impressed me about the series, and there was a lot that truly impressed me, but the second big thing is how this series is a character study on the character of the Penguin that we met in the Batman. And, you know, in the Batman, when you meet the Penguin, he's a comic booky type character. The way he speaks, the way he moves, it's a character that you could literally, it feels like you could lift out of a comic book. And when I heard that series was going to be made about him, like, oh, is it going to feel real? Like, what is that? What is there to actually explore about this character? I didn't feel there was that much to explore about this version of the Penguin before I watched this show. But I was wrong, because there was so much in-depth and harrowing at times exploration into this version of the Penguin, which makes for an incredibly compelling series. And that's something this series does masterfully. It gets under the skin of its titular character, of its central character, and it does so in a way that makes you hate him so much more than you did before. Because in the Batman, you don't really like the character, he's annoying, and he is one of those characters you love to hate, but you don't love to hate him as much as you want to. Now I want to see the Penguin die. After the event of the Batman, I want to see him die in the worst possible way because of how much you hate him coming out of the series, but in the way you want to, in the way you want from a series all about a villain. He's not an anti-hero, he is a villain in this series, and the way they explore his villainous roots, it's brilliant. And yeah, I came out of the series loving to hate that character, you know what I mean? He's one of those characters now that I truly love to hate. And I think a lot of that is also down to Colin Farrell's performance. You know, Colin Farrell is unrecognisable as a Penguin. You see Colin Farrell in real life, and then you see him in the series, and it's like, how is that the same person? There's a couple moments where I was like, oh yeah, I can see Colin Farrell kind of coming through there, but for the majority of the time, you don't see Colin Farrell in this role. And when I say the majority of the time, I mean about 95% of the time in this series. And about 95% of the time in the Batman as well. You don't see him in this role. And he's magnificent in the series. But the surprising thing is, so are the other 3 lead performances, because this series is really led by 4 characters. I mean, there are supporting characters that are also very important in this series as well, for sure. But the series is really led by 4 main characters. The Penguin, obviously, the series is, it's in the title of the series. Then there's Sofia Falcone, played by Christine Milioti. And I haven't really seen Christine Milioti much. She was in Palm Springs. She was really fun in that film. She was in How I Met Your Mother. She was probably one of the more redeeming features of the final season of that show. And she was in something else. She was in 30 Rock for a bit, and I liked her in that. And she had a small role in The Wolf of Wall Street. So she's been in some things here and there, which I've seen her in before. But when I heard that she was going to be playing quite a big role in the Penguin, I was like, how does she fit in this world? Because the world of the Batman is a dark world, and particularly the world of the Penguin is even darker. And from what I've seen of Christine Milioti before, she plays fun and enjoyable comedic roles, usually. But she is remarkable in this series. Every time she's on screen, you are drawn to her in all her nuances and the way she plays Sofia Falcone, this character who just has been completely messed up because of what her father did to her. I'm not going to go into details there, but watch the series if you really want to see. It's absolutely brilliant. She's one of those characters where if looks could kill, if the way she looks at characters could kill, she would be killing thousands. She's got this look about her where it's every single time she's on screen, you're like, what is she going to do? It just feels like she's always one step ahead of everybody, and Christine Milioti plays her remarkably brilliantly. She just plays her so well. And then you get Renzi Felice as Vincent, who is the heart of the series and is a way for us as the audience to get to see the seedy underbelly of Gotham, to get to it's a way for us to get into the world of the Penguin in this series. He plays our gateway into the world of the Penguin and into the Penguin's character, and he is the heart of the series, and his performance, I think, elevates this show and gives it something that was needed. If he wasn't in the series, I don't think it would be the same, but he is in the series, and he gives this series something I think it needed. And then you get Deirdre O'Connell as Frances Cobb, the Penguin's mother, who was also excellent. She plays the mother of this villain, and the mother character is very troubled in this series, and she plays it in a way that you feel sympathy for her, but you're not really sure why she's the way she is. And then as the series progresses, and as it explains why she's the way and as the series explains why she is the way she is, you can't help but admire her performance, admire Deirdre O'Connor's performance as the Penguin's mother all the more. So, the main 4 performances in this series are all standouts, and they all deserve Emmy nominations come next year. And something else I really loved about this series, and there's a lot that I really loved about, there's a couple of nitpicks I had in here and there, which I'll talk about very shortly in this review, but another thing I loved about the series was how it has its own personality, but how it also feels adjacent. It feels like it's connected to the world of the Batman. Like, I still believe when I was watching the series that I was watching something in the world of the Batman, but at the same time now, this series has its own personality about it. It's got a dark and depressing and sometimes harrowing personality about it, but it delivers that personality in spades, quite literally. There are so many really dark moments in this series that I did not see coming, particularly in, I think, episode 4, where you see a character go into a mental institution. It was harrowing that I was sat there watching this episode on my sofa downstairs like this, like about trying to cover my eyes because of just how gripping and how harrowing I found that whole section. This person going into a mental institution, and well, I was about to give something away there, but I'm not going to in case people haven't seen the show yet. But episode 4, whew, that was a dark episode, and then the series continued to be just as dark, particularly in episode 7 when you learn about the Penguin's past and you learn about what he did in his past. That kind of made him into the character, well, it didn't kind of actually, it did make him into the character we see in this show. And by the way, this isn't a side note because it's actually still very important about the show, but the kid who plays the young Penguin in the series is brilliant. I totally believed him as his young version of the Penguin. One of the best child performances I've seen in a TV show over the past year, period. Anyway, yeah, I loved how dark the series was. I loved how gritty it was because it needed to be for what it was. And sometimes, as what he said, the series did get a little too dark for my liking, but for the majority of the time, you know, about 90% of this series I thought was just the right level of dark for the story it was telling. You know, it's a dark series, but it earns its dark nature, if you get me, you know. And plus, at the same time, I loved the score by Mick Giacchino, who is the son of Michael Giacchino, and Michael Giacchino did the phenomenal score for the Batman. You know, bomb, 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 bomb. God, I love the Batman theme from the Batman. I listen to it almost daily. Really, I do. That's not a lie there. And I loved the score for this show because it had those same themes from the Batman, some of the same themes carried over into the series, but it also has a lot of new themes in there, and it perfectly encapsulates the nature of the Penguin's character and then the feel of this show, because this show is a very atmospheric show, and I don't think the atmosphere and how it builds the atmosphere in each and every episode would have worked if it wasn't for the score by Mick Giacchino. And continuing on with the atmosphere, that's another thing I loved about this series, how each and every episode had this atmosphere that was sustained throughout, and how each episode instantly grabs you with this atmosphere and doesn't let go until the end of each episode. You know, I would watch episodes of this, like I said, every other day or sometimes once a week, and when I'd sit down to watch the episode, I'm like, okay, how is it going to immerse me back into the world of the Batman? Because I've had a couple of days or, you know, a day away from watching this show, and then about a minute or 2 minutes into the episode, I'm like, okay, I'm back into the world of the Penguin. I'm back into this dark and gripping world because of the way this series is grabbing me with its atmosphere and its writing, because this is such a well-written show to the point that it doesn't even feel like a superhero or comic book show. The thing that I was worried about the most was that it was going to feel all comic booky and superhero-y, and it doesn't. It does not feel like a superhero show. It does not feel like a quote-unquote comic book show, and the reason I did quote-unquote there is because sure, you can class it as a comic book TV show because it's following a comic book character. The Penguin is a character from the comic books. But if you didn't know this was based on a comic book character, I don't think you would realise it, because it's just a great piece of TV. It's not even a great piece of TV. It's an excellent piece of TV. And yeah, I've got my nitpicks. Like, I would have liked there to be more supporting characters from the Batman in this series. Like, where was Commissioner Gordon? He could have popped up in this series quite easily, and I'm surprised he didn't. And why wasn't there more mention of the Batman, particularly with the Batman and the Penguin's confrontation and their interactions in the Batman? Like, the first time the Penguin comes into contact with the Batman, he's like, you're everything, you're everything they say you are. It says something like that. It's one of my favourite introductions. It's one of my favourite moments in The Batman, just that scene between them two. And I'm surprised there wasn't more mention of the Batman in this series. That was one thing that really did confuse me a little bit. But I could get past all that because this was such a well-written and well-acted and well-produced show that expands and beautifully and seamlessly expands on the world of the Batman and fleshes his world out, and it's truly compelling and it's harrowing to watch as well, and it's dark with a capital D, and is just an excellent TV show. You know, a lot of people said this already, and so I'm not going to be the first person to say this, but this show, it shares a lot of big similarities with The Sopranos, to the point that, you know, Tony's relationship with his mother in the first series of The Sopranos is very similar to the relation between the Penguin and his mother in this series, even sharing some similarities to the whole Oedipus complex. If you don't know what the Oedipus complex is, look it up. I'm not going to go into great detail on that in this review today, but yeah, I was really surprised how this series reminded me of The Sopranos, and in the best way possible, because The Sopranos is one of the best written shows of the past, however, well, it's just one of the best written shows ever, isn't it? And this series reminded me of The Sopranos in the best way, because again, going back to that thing before, it does not feel like a superhero or comic book TV series. It transcends the comic book genre, because in the end, it's just an excellent piece of TV, which is not what I expected to say about this show at all. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that the Penguin, I'm going to say that it's I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Again, I had my small criticisms, like I do think it gets too dark. I would have liked there to be more mention of the Batman. I'm not saying I wanted him to show up. I just would have liked there to be more mention, and I would have liked to see more supporting characters from the Batman show up, you know, tied to the Batman just a little bit more. Like, as I already said, Commissioner Gordon could have showed up. It would have made perfect sense, and not to go into too many details, but I was surprised that he didn't. That's all I'll say. And I do think it's one of those shows which you can't binge. I don't like using that word, but I seem to use it quite a lot. I don't think it's a show which you can binge, just because of how dark it really is. But, yeah, I was really shook up by the series and the way I wanted to be. And it made me hate the Penguin so much more than I did before I watched this series, because the series is so clever. At one point you feel aligned with the character of the Penguin, you start to like him, and then he does something and you hate him all over again. You start to like him, and then the series makes you hate him, and it's just so brilliantly done that. You know, you come out of the series wanting to see the Penguin die, and you hate that character or more after seeing the series. But you love to hate that character as well. You can't wait to see him come back because of just how well they've written that character, and because of how well Colin Farrell plays that character. This series is evidence that you can have a series based on a horrible character, on a character which does so many things that you detest, but you can also make that series compelling and very good TV. And that's exactly what this series was. It was an excellent character study into the character of the Penguin, which we met in the Batman, and it expanded on the world of Gotham, or expanded on the city of Gotham that we saw in the Batman in a way that I thought was masterful. It's led by 4 magnificent performances and brilliant writing that you really don't expect in a comic book / superhero TV show. In the end, it transcended the comic book genre. It just does not feel like a comic book TV show or superhero TV show, and I mean that in the best way possible. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, The Penguin is a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen The Penguin, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.